You're listening to Whoa! Potluck.
And hey, welcome to Books and Boba, a book club and podcast featuring books by Asian and Asian American authors. My name is Marvin Yue.
And I'm Rira Yu.
And we are here today with an author chat with Rachel Khong to talk about her latest short story collection, My Dear You. As always, Books and Boba is supported in part by our listeners. So if you've been enjoying our podcast and want to become a bigger part of our book club, head on over to patreon.com/booksandboba, where as an official Patreon supporter, you gain access to our members-only Discord server, where you can talk to us and fellow book club members in real time about all sorts of topics, including our monthly book club picks. And if you join us at the Honey Boba level, you also gain access to our monthly bonus podcast, Boba Chats, as well as the opportunity to help us pick a quarterly book club pick, of which our current book club pick was selected by our patrons. So definitely thanks to everyone who has joined us so far on Patreon. And as always, we hope to see more of you there in the future.
Yeah, so we talked to Rachel Khong about her new short story collection, My Dear You. We talked to her about how she curated it, what short stories mean to her, how speculative fiction helps her explore topics like diversity. And we talk about soulmates too, and end of the world, afterlife stuff. Yeah, a lot of topics that we cover in this conversation. So I hope you enjoy our chat. And we are here with Rachel Khong, the author of Goodbye Vitamin and New York Times bestseller Real Americans. She is the co-founder of The Ruby, a work and event space for women and non-binary writers and artists in San Francisco's Mission District. And we're here to discuss her new collection of short stories, My Dear You. Welcome to the show, Rachel.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, we read Goodbye Vitamin as one of our previous book club picks. It was probably one of our earliest picks, actually.
Yeah, I just looked it up just to make sure. It was our September 2017 book club pick. So
Wow.
probably in our first book of our second year of this podcast.
Oh,
That's amazing.
Yeah.
It's an honor.
Yeah.
Yeah, when we heard that you were coming out with a new book, we're like, oh, we need to get Rachel on because, she has a quote unquote history with our podcast. So we're really happy that you are taking the time to talk with us. Usually I start the episode with a little icebreaker, and considering that one of your short stories, you have characters who have to decide what animals they're going to become at the end of the world. My question to you is, if you had to choose what animals to be in your next life, what would it be and why?
Well, I'm going to out myself. In that story in particular, I most relate to Ruby, the character of Ruby, I think, in that story. And Ruby is sort of this, she's also a writer. She's kind of trying to rationalize what animal to be, but in the end, she chooses very intuitively, and she chooses a turtle. And I think I would choose a turtle too. It's pretty weird, I think, to choose a reptile. Like, most people wouldn't choose a reptile. I'm really curious what you guys would choose. But I just love turtles. Like, every time I have seen a turtle in the wild, I just feel this intense connection. And I love that they have their little shells. I love that they're so weird and kind of alien looking. I just feel a real connection with turtles. So maybe it'd be a sea turtle or something like that. A turtle who's got, the whole ocean to play around in, but also spends a lot of time basking in the sun. What about you guys?
I feel like whenever I come across a video of environmentalists and animal rights activists, they release the turtles into the beach, and they're like babies, so they're trying to get to the ocean. I always watch those. They're I don't know, there's something really heartwarming about it, and it's go inspirational.
Yeah.
For me, if humans still existed and only I was turning into an animal, I would probably be a panda, because they're cute, they're useless, they're pampered and they sleep a lot. So that's in a world where only I turn into an animal and everybody else stays a human. But if in the world of that story where everybody's turning into an animal, I would probably be a manatee. I don't know anything about manatees other than they look like sea cows. And I don't know. I just feel like I have the same energy as them. So
I love that. That's a great choice.
Yeah, I think for me, it's also like, I feel like the ocean is a place that like I would just like to explore, and there's just a lot of space, but I also want to just like chill, right? I want to just be able to chill and do nothing. So turtle is great. Thinking maybe like a sea lion or a seal, like just like being able to like be in the ocean, but also hang out on a beach. Yeah, I think
sounds like we would all hang out together in our animal afterlife.
I mean, it feels like being on land is just so much work. Like if you're a predator, you have to like go hunt for your food. That's like so much work. And then if you're not a predator, you have to be worried about like there's still stuff in the ocean that'll eat you. But I feel like there's more room to run away or like
definitely
chill, right?
And it feels like you just open your mouth and food goes in.
Yeah, right.
I don't know if that's true, but it feels like it.
I asked this question to my husband last night, and he asked, do dinosaurs count as animals? And I'm like, I mean, I guess so, because in your story, like extinct animals are an option. So yeah, I guess we could all be dinosaurs as well. So that's always
but which dinosaur, right? That's so much to think about.
I mean, the other alternative is flying, right? Because flying sounds really fun. The ocean, the ocean's really cool, but I feel like being, you know, like a flying dinosaur would also be amazing. Yeah.
Maybe a duck, so you do all three, right? Or like some sort of marine bird. Yeah.
Yeah, the other day I was in the park and I was at the Silver Lake Reservoir, and in the trees there are all these huge nests where like the great blue herons put their nests high up in the trees, and there were a bunch of nests, and it was so cool. So I think some kind of huge bird that goes in water but also goes up high in the trees, that would be so cool.
That's true. I do love thrills, so flying does sound like it would be a lot of fun. These are just some of the thought-provoking thoughts you could also have when reading Rachel's short story collection, My Dear You. But before we get to that, like we like to start off our author chats by learning more about our authors, how you became one, especially, you know, being a podcast for books by Asian and Asian American authors. I feel like it's interesting to learn about what type of journey our authors took to becoming an author, because there's so many different stories within our community. So can you, I guess, share a little bit about your writer's journey?
Yeah, I have been writing since I was really little. Probably when I was 6 was when I wrote my first short story. And I was always a kid who loved going to the library, loved checking out as many books as I could. I didn't ever really know that you could become an author. Like, it seemed kind of crazy that people wrote books. Like, I didn't know where the books came from. I just knew that I liked reading them. But, you know, my parents were both civil engineers, and it didn't seem plausible to become an author. Whenever I told my parents that I wanted to be a writer, they would say, "Oh, you want to be a journalist?" Because journalism seemed, at least back then, like more of an actual career that you could have. So I think I always kind of held writing and fiction writing specifically in the back of my mind, sort of believing that I would, do something professionally with writing like journalism. But it was sort of as I went to school, attended college, that I met real writers for the first time. I had friends whose parents were writers. I had writers who were like published authors who were actually teaching my classes. And it was kind of then that I realized, oh, writers exist. They live among us. They're working right now, and I could be one of them. So yeah, that's sort of, I don't know if this really answers your question, but that was sort of like my path to realizing, oh, I could be a writer, and that it was an option for me. And so from there, I was always doing, writing to make money on the side. Fiction is not necessarily like the most lucrative career, but I was always yeah, cultivating both types of writing, both doing nonfiction and the fiction writing simultaneously. And yeah, for many years worked at a food magazine as an editor called, the magazine is called Lucky Peach. It was a quarterly magazine. And it wasn't like straight up food journalism. It was a way to be really creative, to sort of experiment with like, yeah, like really creative nonfiction writing too.
Yeah, I do remember hearing about Lucky Peach, and I was like, oh, that's like so cool that a novelist was also doing that type of writing. And I just feel like any type of writing will help you as an author because you're just like collecting tools, and it is a very grueling and isolating process, I think, writing. And I know your debut novel, Goodbye Vitamin, which we read for a book club, like I mentioned. It's a very slim novel. It's very short. It's epistolary, it's episodic. And your sophomore novel, Real Americans, is a tome. It is like 400 pages of a multi-generational saga. So obviously you're showing your diversity as a writer in that regard. And I'm just curious as to like, how is your writing process different for each book? And how has it been shifting gears again with short story writing?
Well, it has to be different for every book because my life is different, right? Like my life is sort of always changing. With Goodbye Vitamin, that was a book that I had started while I was in grad school. I was getting my MFA for writing, and that was a book that I kind of stumbled upon in my final year of grad school. And I wasn't quite done once I finished school. I still had a lot of work to do. But I worked on that book kind of simultaneously with working at Lucky Peach or working other jobs, right? Like right out of school, I was very briefly a hostess at a restaurant. Then I worked at a cafe, making food. And those jobs were so exhausting. I was like, I need to get a different job. I got the job at Lucky Peach, which is also really exhausting. It was like a more than 40 an hour a week job. It was a job where sometimes we'd have deadlines until 4 a.m, or even worse. And so writing Goodbye Vitamin, I mean, that book sort of was compatible with my life at the time in that it's really like piecemeal, as you said. And it's sometimes I would just like work on like little snippets at a time. I had to sort of squeeze in my writing into nights and weekends, and I would take vacation time to work on the novel. But it kind of fit my life at the time because it was so, it was in these little pieces. I could sometimes write things down on scraps of paper as I was just like at work. And that was the way that Goodbye Vitamin got done. But for Real Americans, my life was had shifted again. And at that point, I had founded the Ruby, which was a sort of work and event space for writers and artists. And that was also a very more than full-time job, but at least I could sort of dictate my own schedule a little bit more. And I would, write every morning when I got to the Ruby and just sort of shut myself away into the podcasting room that we had. And I think with every project, I'm just interested in doing something that I haven't done before, trying to grow as a writer and sort of develop my own skills as a writer. And so, I think Goodbye Vitamin, I was really just like struggling to like I just wanted to like write any novel, like write a novel. And that sort of piecemeal novel was what I could manage at the time, given the circumstances of my life. And with Real Americans, I was really interested in writing the sort of book that I loved growing up, which is a sort of immersive book that was really narrative and, had a plot and just was the kind of book that like when I was a kid, I would stay up too late to read, I really wanted to create that kind of experience. And I felt like I didn't quite know how to do it when I began it, but I sort of grew into the writer who could write that book. And that book took me also, everything takes me a really long time, I guess, but that book also took me a really long time. And the stories, so these stories that are coming out, I guess technically this book took me the most amount of time. I think Goodbye Vitamin took me about 5.5 years. Real Americans took about 6.5, 7 years. And this story collection, from the very first story that I wrote, that story was written in about 2016. And then the final story that I wrote was written in 2025. So that was about 9 years of actual writing. I mean, it wasn't nonstop because I was working on the novels at the time, but yeah, so I guess technically this is the book that has taken me the longest to write, even though it's, I wasn't constantly writing stories, but the stories are sort of what I squoze them in between the novels, or, you know, like when I was like really like banging my head against the wall in the process of writing these novels, I would, you know, go off to the side and write the stories in order to sort of feel like I could do, like I could accomplish something again.
Yeah, like a palate cleanser or like
Yeah.
a refresh.
Yeah.
I'm always interested because this is actually our first time talking to an author about a short story collection. I think we've talked to authors about poetry collections before, but it's interesting that you said that this book, like these stories you've been writing since Goodbye Vitamin. And how did the idea of collecting all the stories together into a collection come to you?
Well, in publishing, I think you can't really count on anything. Like I sort of hoped that I could one day collect, you know, have this collection of stories, but I didn't know that it would happen because story collections are, it's maybe hard to compare stories and poems, but like they're probably equally hard to sell, right? Like the publishers are not, I wonder if stories are even lower on the totem pole, right? Like publishers are not scrambling for the most part to publish story collections. But at the same time, I really learned a lot from story collections as I was growing as a writer. I mean, I still do. I still read a short story every day. But when I was kind of learning to find my own voice as a writer, it was really story collections, which sort of like immersed me in all these different ways of writing, and all these different perspectives from writers. So, you know, back when I was in college, I would read, this was in my senior year, I read one short story collection every week and sort of, you know, learned from lots of different types of story writers. And I think that practice really encouraged me in both story writing, but also just writing in general. Like I was like, wow, there's so many different ways to write. There's so many different types of writing. And I can do this. I can do the thing that is like really specific to me. So I think I always like held story collections up as like a desire because they had been so formative to me and they really helped me, you know, find my way as a writer. And I really hoped that I would get to do it for myself, but it's never a guarantee, like I said, especially with stories. So, you know, back when I sold Real Americans to my editor at Knopf, I chose him in part because I knew that he loves short stories. His name is John Freeman. He used to have a literary journal essentially where he published a lot of short stories, and he's just a big fan of short stories. So I knew if I went with John, like there's a high likelihood that he would be interested in publishing this all as a collection.
So it was part of your plan all along.
Yeah, it's my evil plan. But you know, when I was writing the stories, I hoped that they would be a book, but I never really counted on it. And so they do each, to me, very much stand alone. Like my intention was just to write them as the stories themselves. And when they're collected all together, at first I was like, oh no, it's too much. Because I intended each one of them to stand on its own. It's like when you put them all together, it's like, oh, it's just a lot. It's like a lot of wackiness, a lot of playfulness, a lot of like, emotion. And I was like, is this too much? But at this point, I'm like, whatever.
Yeah, I was really surprised to like, because there's you play with a lot of genres too. There's supernatural stuff, there's sci-fi, and there's just like this regular old Asian American drama. And I really had a good time. Like, I think the mark of a good short story collection is like, I want each of these stories to be a full book because I just want more, right?
Yeah, I think maybe that's my standard too. I really like, I just really like it when short stories are short stories and novels are novels. Like I know sometimes I'm reading a novel and I think this should just be a short story. Like you're trying to stretch this out. There's like not that, like just like let it be a short story. I think that it's kind of unfortunate that everyone is sort of being pushed toward novels because that's the thing that makes more money, relatively. I just think that they are both really fun forms. Like you can do so much in a novel that you can't do in a short story. But a short story can just be it can almost be like a song, right? That you just like hear and that like changes something for you.
Yeah, I definitely relate. Like I used to program for the local Asian American Film Festival, and sometimes I was a features programmer, so I would watch full length movies that people make.
Mm-hmm.
And my biggest critique for most of these films were like, this just could have been a short. Like these are great ideas, but not enough to fill like 60 minutes to 69 minutes.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of the short stories that I remember, like even to this day, are like, they all had something really strong to say, and like I'm just thinking of like a random example, Shirley Jackson's The Lottery. Like I was traumatized by that as a kid, and it's just stayed with me. And I think that's the power of short stories. Like they're just like so compact, and you have to be so economical with your words. Every sentence has to count. And I feel like that can be a lot harder than writing a novel. I mean, they're two different writing forms. You have to, like with a novel, you have to plan out a lot of the narrative structure and you have to like stretch it out. And it's totally different. And I feel like publishing really should put short story as like they should really give it more flowers, in my personal opinion.
Yeah. And with The Lottery, it's, I think, a really good short story, even though it feels complete, right? And it's like this whole world, it kind of lingers with you, right? Like that's the feeling that I'm sort of going for, where there's still something that you're kind of thinking over, that you're mulling over. I think The Lottery is a good example of that. There's also Ursula Le Guin's story, The Ones Who Walk Away from the Omelas.
Yes, love it.
Which, it's so short, but then you're like, oh my God, I have to think about this for the rest of my life, and that's, I think, always the goal, that it's both complete, but there's something that kind of lingers and stays with you.
Yeah. Let's begin with your first short story, My Dear You. It was first published in 2017 by Tin House. And I'm just curious as to like what inspired you to write the story about an afterlife, and why did you decide to make it your like title / centerpiece for this collection?
It has now been so long since I wrote that story. It's been about 10 years, honestly. So it's almost like having to put myself back into a different body or something. It's funny because I wrote that story before. Have you guys seen The Good Place?
Yeah.
Yes. I wrote it before I saw The Good Place. I kind of like, it's so mystical and it's kind of woo, but I do sort of believe that ideas are floating out there and you kind of catch them as artists. And so I had not heard about that show, but I think the story and the show kind of came up at the same time, because it was really sort of sudden for me that this story happened. It's one of those, I would say roughly half of these stories kind of came to me in like a big burst, where I just felt like I was kind of transcribing something, or I had to write really fast in order to like capture what the story wanted to be. And so My Dear You was definitely one of those stories where it kind of just like happened. And I don't quite know how it happened. It was like I sat down, I wanted to write about, I don't know that I knew what I wanted to write about, but sort of that first part came out where I realized, oh, this person is in heaven and she's getting to choose her face. And she's kind of deciding if she wants to be Asian again. And that was what I had in the beginning. I think everything that I write kind of comes out of this like swirl of stuff that I'm going through personally too, and all of these different interests that I'm having. And so at the time that I was writing that, I was also kind of thinking about marriage. I had been together with my boyfriend at the time for many, many years. We had known each other for even longer, and we're kind of wondering, like, should we get married? Should we not get married? What does marriage even mean? What is a good relationship, right? What's a successful relationship? And from that sort of swirl of questions, this story kind of just like came into being. and it felt right to sort of start the collection with that story, both because it was chronologically the first, but also because it does kind of set the tone for what the rest of the book is. I think it was the first story that I wrote that I felt fully, I don't know, stories always teach me, like they teach me what I'm interested in, like interested in writing about, even what I just care about in the moment. And so it's kind of a weird lineage, but that story led me to write Real Americans, because I was thinking about that question of choice and what we choose for ourselves and what's already chosen for us. And that kind of led me to the book. So yeah, I'm already forgetting your original question. But
no, you definitely like answered it. I was asking you like the inspiration for it and why'd you decide to make it your centerpiece for the collection. And to me, like I felt like you said, it set the tone really well for the rest of the collection. I feel like a major question your collection asks is like, how do we continue to love someone after we change? And like, I'm personally curious because your protagonist in My Dear You gradually loses memories of their former earthly life because time runs differently in the afterlife, and all their details about their husband gets lost. And at one point, the readers can interpret that the protagonist unknowingly reunites with their husband again and falls in love with their husband again. But their afterlife romance lasts only 100 years before calling it quits. And I'm just curious, like, what are your personal opinions about soulmates? Do you believe in soulmates? Do you believe that relationships can last beyond earthly life, I guess?
It's so funny because I do think I've been thinking about that lately. I don't even know what I believed at the time that I wrote this story. I was just sort of trying to write my way through questions that I had. And I would say that I still don't really know what I believe. I was raised in the Christian church. My parents are really religious. My whole family, you know, we went to church multiple times a week. And so I don't know. I don't go to church anymore, but I still have a sort of wonder about, like, you know, what is beyond us. And I don't quite know what I believe about all that, but I think lately I'm thinking that, yeah, like maybe soulmates do exist. Like, and maybe it's not just the one person. Maybe there's there are people who you kind of have you have business with, and who are here to teach you something, and you're here to teach them something. That's kind of what I'm thinking at the moment, but I feel like it's always, you know, it's like shifting as I grow. What do you think?
Like for me, I guess like when you're younger, you think you're gonna be best friends forever with this one person.
Yeah.
And it's always like, I feel like friendship breakups are sometimes way more painful than romantic relationships, because especially if it's a childhood friend, because they've seen you through all your seasons. And I think with some people, you are meant to have them for a season, and then they've kind of served their purpose in your life, and you have to let them go. And I guess for me, like I believe in soulmates, both romantically and platonically, but I do believe there is an ending for those relationships.
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes the relationship like really beautiful, because you only have like this certain amount of time with them. That's my personal belief.
Yeah. Marvin, what do you think?
Yeah, Marvin, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think deep down I'm still kind of romantic. Like when you meet someone that like you vibe with, there's like this feeling that you guys are both there at the right place at the right time, and there's got to be something cosmic about that, right? I think deep down I still kind of believe that's part of what's going on, but at the same time, I'm like, I'm over 40 years old now and lived through many, many different eras of my life. And I think that's something that a lot of your stories capture really well. It's like you have a story, there's a story, Slow and Steady, about two,
Mm-hmm.
not even former lovers, but former kind of like close friends reuniting, but in different stages of their life and kind of thinking back on how that path, like not even how they did diverse, but like that moment when they were close. And you also have the story about like the woman who is haunted by the ghosts of all of her past relationships through a haunted cat, right? And just like I think time happens to all of us. Things happen and things happen you can't change. And I think I don't know, there's something about like you being the sum total of all your experiences, good and bad, that's really kind of poetic too, right? You are who you are because of all the good and the bad, and those are all things that, for better or worse, were meant to happen, right? I don't know if that answered your question either. But
No. I mean, when I put this collection together, I didn't know if there would be any kind of theme running through all of the stories. I didn't know what it would look like to put all these stories together because, as I said, I just didn't know that a book was possible, that it would happen for me. But when I did put them together, I saw that they were like, if there is a theme to the collection, I do think it's what you were just talking about, Marvin, where it's like the fact that we don't get to live all possible lives. We just get to live the one life that we lead. Some choices that we make mean that we can't make other choices. And the fact that we're in a relationship with a person means not being in a relationship with another person. You know what I mean? Like there's just like doors that close as a result of being a person and a result of being alive. And I think that when I was sort of coming to that realization, especially during those stories that you mentioned, Slow and Steady, and also Tapetum Lucidum, which is about the haunted cat, I was thinking like, wow, that's sad. Like that is kind of sad that we don't get to live all possible lives, that I don't get to try out being in this relationship or try out, you know what I mean? Like it felt sad to me that there were limits to life. But I think that as I sort of kept growing older and also writing into these questions, I realized too that there's something really beautiful about the fact that we only choose, that our choices make us who we are, and that like some doors close on us and that we just have to live the lives that we lead. Like, I do think that's what kind of gives our lives meaning. And sort of back to that soulmates question, like I have a friend who I've been friends with since we were 5. And now we live about 10 minutes away from each other. And she was the friend that I was thinking about as I wrote D-Day, which is the final story in the collection, which is about friendship sort of at the end of the world. And yeah, we were talking about how friendships sometimes, or any kind of relationship, they're not meant to last forever. Because none of us last forever, right? Like we all sort of have an end point. We have, just circumstances and phases in our lives. And I think, like this collection is so interested in that. It's like, what are the limits on our lives? What do we do with those limits? And how do we be in relationships with one another, knowing that there is an end, there is an end in sight, I guess.
Yeah, I do want to talk about like the theme of choice and also the absence of choice. We've kind of seen speculative sci-fi stories like Get Out and also the most recent and recently Slanted, where characters get to choose to alter their races. And your story, The Freshening, it kind of introduces this concept of what if everyone else changes? What if everyone sees each other as the same race and gender as themselves? You don't have to change anything about yourself, and you'll see more representation of your own identities. And I thought that was like a really clever inverse to the whole like, oh, what if you could choose your race type of story?
Yeah.
Like, what did you want to explore about like the nuances of diversity and what it means to live in a world where everybody looks like you?
Yeah. Well, that story, it came out, I wrote it also a while ago now, probably 8 or 9 years ago, 8 years ago, I was kind of, I mean, really it came out of, I was thinking about the fact that, so many Black men and boys are killed at the hands of police. And it's so upsetting that it's continuing to happen, right? Like nothing has changed. And I was feeling that sort of helplessness, like, why is this happening? How could this change? And my mind kind of went to, well, make everybody look like you. And then that would solve the problem, right? Like, you wouldn't racially profile other people if everyone seemed to you the same the same.
Yeah, it's like a John Malkovich situation.
Exactly.
Like,
yeah. Yeah. And so it kind of came out of that sort of wondering, just that like sort of despair at this injustice, and then I kind of let the story, just unspool in the way that it did. I don't think obviously that's the solution. That doesn't seem like a good solution to this problem. But it has been interesting the way that I'm often writing about what I'm thinking about at the time, what I'm interested in, what might be happening politically or globally or whatever. And publishing is very slow. The cycle of publishing is it just takes forever for a book to come out. But it has been strange the way that, I guess it's not that surprising, but just the way in which like these problems are still with us, right? Like we haven't solved them. And I still wonder that question, right? I still wonder like what could solve this. And I think that, it feels like even more distant than ever that we might solve it.
Yeah, that was a really fun story to read. Just it's the type of like kind of what if sci-fi that I really love in short stories. And it was not fun. Fun's not the right word, but like when they realized that making everyone look the same doesn't solve your issues, that people are still in different classes, different people will find reasons to ostracize other people.
Mm-hmm.
And it's such like a government solution to do like the most like kind of half-ass like surface level like bandage on a societal issue.
Yeah, and one that is so imperfect and really doesn't work. Yeah, I mean I love that too. I love when I really want I think I'm striving toward a story that kind of shows us the world more deeply, even though it is like out there and it's it's like a weird thing that would probably never happen, but it still kind of like amplifies the world in which we live in and kind of brings to surface like how absurd it is that we're still doing this,
Yeah, there is that, like, sorry I'm jumping around, but in your last story, D-Day, where people are preparing for the end of the world, where they become an animal of their choice and people are still grifting, the people are still selling services to help you choose the most ideal animal. It's just like, oh, this is the reason why humans are being like canceled at the end of the world. Right?
Yeah, definitely. Like I think with that story especially was so it was so fun to think about. I mean, again, fun is like not quite the right word. It was like both fun and like sad to think about the ways in which humans were going to continue to human like up until the very last minute.
Yeah. And also kind of sad / funny that like I was like, yeah, makes sense. Yeah. That tracks.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I was just thinking like going back to like the story of the freshening where everybody turns into, like everyone looks exactly like you and are the same gender as you. Like I was thinking, okay, as like a heterosexual person and you're already in a relationship, like how would your sexuality change? Does it change? Because now you're not with like a cis man or a cis woman. You are with someone who has the same gender as you. So it's like, that's interesting. Like, how does that change your relationship? And it also made me think how this is a very diasporan story because as the minority in this country, we're not used to seeing, unless you live in an enclave, we're not used to seeing people who look like us or who understand our cultural backgrounds. Whereas like in China or Korea or Japan, it's like everyone is the same ethnicity as you, unless you're like the 1% minority there. And it's like, okay, like those people back in the motherland, they could just navigate the world just thinking that everyone looks like them. Whereas with us, it's like, it really is like a what if scenario. It is like their real life is speculative to us as diasporans.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, but when I go back to, I was born in Malaysia. When I go back there, I don't feel like I know how to navigate it, like I belong, right? I feel like I'm sticking out, and people can immediately identify me as an American, right? So living here, it's like you're molded in a strange way. And I was really interested in exploring those strange ways that Asian Americans specifically have been molded and shaped by where we live.
So one of the recurring topics in your stories is like the hypersexualization and fetishization of Asian women. And as an Asian woman myself, I personally found your story, Family O, to be disturbingly cathartic. I don't know, like just to see a crew of competent, confident Asian women executing a payback against this one white guy who definitely has yellow fever, and they've all dated this guy, and he's tried to pull one over by taking them out on the same date and trying to impress them by speaking their language with a perfect accent or whatever. And I was just like, I've definitely heard stories from other Asian American girlfriends who are like, yeah, I went on a date and the guy definitely has a thing for Asian women, and that's just something that is inevitable when it comes to being in like the dating scene. So did you like I don't know, like for this story, did you hear dating horror stories from your friends? Like, how did you come up with this idea?
I was really thinking about the fact that as an Asian American woman, I'm not often seen as a person who is like dangerous at all, right? Like people always let me use their bathroom at restaurants and stuff. Like it's not like I'm not threatening in any way. I'm like I seem small and unassuming or whatever. And this story kind of came out of that. I was thinking about that and thinking like what kind of like crime or like deviousness could happen with this group of really unassuming, people who are like assumed to be, docile and like obedient or whatever. I've never been on an online date. I met my husband before, like internet dating and like the apps were a thing. So this story was like a really fun way for me to just kind of like dig a little deeper and like kind of like think back to like, being in my 20s. And yeah, like I don't know, when you're dating someone, you kind of you want to know who their prior girlfriends were, right? Like you want to make sure that it's like you're not just like another Asian woman that this person is dating. Like it's just like it feels like a weird risk. And so I was sort of thinking about all of those things again with stories that's like all about this like mix of like what I'm interested in and what and also memories and like sort of past experiences. And so it was kind of this revenge fantasy, but at the same time, it was also a little bit more complicated than that, right? Because I think the protagonist like doesn't feel like, it's not just like, yes, or we're getting revenge. Like we feel like 100% happy about that. She feels a little bit used also by these quote unquote friends, like new friends that she has. And yeah, I mean, I think in the end, it's like there's nobody who benefits from like being categorized, being, put into these types, right? Like it doesn't really, I think it's like, it's understandable, like as in the freshening, it's a way of managing people if you're a government, like to group people into categories. I mean, I think I was thinking a lot about the fact that there, you know, so much of the discourse in the last 10 years has been about like identities and about who we are, and I think that's really great. Like, I think it's important to like have obviously like more representation, more discussion of our identity groups. But I also am feeling more like, oh, we can't lose sight of the fact that like everybody is an individual, right? And like everyone is like so unique, and you can't really like profile anyone based on what they look like. And that story, yeah, it just kind of came out of thinking about all of that.
Yeah, which is why I say disturbingly cathartic, because I'm
Yeah.
like I shouldn't feel happy that this person who has been fetishizing Asian women is like getting his comeuppance, because it's like, okay, consent, and also, you know, like is it that horrible of a crime? It's not even a crime. It's like,
Yeah.
like, is he like, what if someone just sat down with him and had like a serious conversation about this, rather than like a revenge plot being like thrown against him? And I'm like, but it's disturbingly cathartic to me, because I'm like, this will never happen. So I think that's the power of like speculative fiction as well, because it gives writers of color like a way to explore these very difficult themes that can be very hard to talk about in everyday life, and you're putting it in like this out of this world setting where it's like, okay, well, if I can accept this setting where nothing really is logical, then this is like a great place for me to think about these topics. Like, do you agree with that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, with that story in particular, I think I was also thinking about, we were living through this time of, you know, Me Too, and holding people accountable for, you know, past abuses or whatever. And I think that there was a sense of catharsis with all of that, but there was also, I think in a lot of situations, a lot of like murky, you know, murkiness. And I think I don't ever purport to have the answer. A lot of these stories are just asking the questions. I don't have the solutions. Obviously, like the freshening is not a solution. But I'm just wondering. And I think that by asking the questions, hopefully it's just like perpetuating more questions and like getting us a little bit closer to, I don't know, like considering one another in a realer way.
Yeah. I guess as someone who did, like, because I'm the only one in this podcast currently who did go through online dating to meet my now wife and mother my children. But when I was going through those trenches, I mean, I did have a go-to first date because it's just easy. Like, you know, doing online dating it's a numbers game, right? You're trying to like meet as many people as possible and seeing who you can hit it off with. And sometimes it's just easier to have a go-to place to take them all. You know, so yeah, I did somewhat relate to the target of
You're
that
awful.
Story. But at the same
No.
time.
I mean, I think that the narrator really has, like, she feels like a little bit of sympathy for him about that, right? Because he's just someone who likes doing the same thing over and over again. I think in his situation, it's not great. Like the optics aren't great there. But yeah, like you said, it's so interesting to me that like online dating is a numbers game, at the same time that like none of us are numbers. We're real people, and like there is something kind of magical that happens, right? When you do meet the right person and it feels like, oh, like you're the right person, and there's something that you don't even need to really talk about it. Like it just feels like, oh, there's something here, like I can feel it.
Yeah.
And that's so fascinating to me. I think that's why I wanted to write about it.
I did do online dating like 10 years ago. It's a whole different. If you write that story now, it's like it's a whole different beast. Now it's all just like, now it's not. Now,
but I do
now would be now if you write it now, it would be a combination of the freshening and Family O. I think it would be like those two mashed together somehow.
Yeah.
I was just saying, like, I do like the fact that even though you have characters who are, actively dating, you also have characters who are like, I'm fine with just being by myself. Or like, I'm fine with being in a very casual relationship that I know is not going to last. And
Yeah.
I feel like that's something that a lot of women get demonized for, because, like there's this like stereotype of like, oh, all women want to get married, have children, and that's like the most fulfilling life that they can live. And it's just like, actually, there are people who actively choose to not go down that route, and that's totally valid.
Definitely. And I think that is something that I have been thinking about for years now, just the fact that we give so much lip service to diversity in this country, right? We're always saying that diversity matters so much to Americans, but there's still, and probably even more now because of social media, there's such a pressure to conform, right? To have a certain kind of life, or to look a certain way, right? Like have a certain kind of butt or whatever.
It's very much like a lot of curation. Yeah.
Yeah. It feels like it's getting even worse when like the internet was supposed to make it more democratic and more exciting for us all to be different, right? Now it's like weirdly pushing us toward like a homogeneity. And I think I was interested in writing about, in some of these stories, like people don't even care, like it's not even an issue within the story, it's just the way they are, right? Or like they've decided, in the last story, like they don't even talk about their relationships. It's more these two people are in a friendship and that's their most important relationship at the end of the world. So I think I was interested in writing those people without like any need to question their choices, right? Because those are choices too. Like, I think, again, this whole book is about the choices that we make and that sort of like, like just pull our lives into a certain direction. And I think that, there's so much interesting stuff that can be found in whatever choice that you make.
Yeah. I definitely agree. So we're towards like the end of our time, and I would love to ask you if you are currently working on anything else. Is it another short story collection? Is it a novel? Because it seems like you're branching out to a lot of things. So,
I am working on another novel. It's been a little while now, but as we've talked about, it takes me a while to write. Because I think in part I'm working for a while just toward what the book is even about. So I'm writing a novel that I can't quite talk about yet because I'm afraid it's all going to collapse or somebody else is going to take my idea. But it's like lots of different perspectives. It's more about Malaysia than I've ever written about, and so I'm excited to go there hopefully later this year and do a lot more research for this book. But it's been a while since I wrote a short story, and I do want to write one at some point, but I'm trying not to force myself.
Well, it was a wonderful read. So congratulations on the release of your short story collection. Rachel, thank you so much for joining us on Books and Boba, and congratulations and good luck on your future writing endeavors.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks for listening to our author chat with Rachel Khong. Her latest short story collection, My Dear You, is available now at booksellers everywhere, including, as always, the Books and Boba online bookstore. So if you're interested in picking up the book and want to support us here at Books and Boba, as well as your local bookstores, head on over to booksandboba.com and check out our bookshop link. We definitely appreciate all the support our members have given us over the years by purchasing books through our online bookstore. And speaking of appreciating our members, this month's book club pick was a patron's choice chosen for us by our Honey Boba tier members. For the month of April, we are reading The Elsewhere Express by Samantha Soto Yambao. The book is pitched as a wistful, Ghibli-esque fantasy featuring a magical train that appears only to those whose lives are found adrift to bring them a very special cargo, a sense of purpose, peace, and belonging. We will be discussing this book at the end of the month on our podcast, but we are also discussing it in real time over on Discord. So if you are a Patreon supporter, be sure to check in on the discussion thread for our reading schedule and to give your thoughts on this book as well. As always, we love to include feedback from our members in our discussion episodes whenever possible. So thanks to everyone who has joined in on the conversation so far. But yeah, that'll do it for this episode of Books and Boba. Thanks once again to Rachel Khong for joining us, and we'll see you all next time. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to Books and Boba. This podcast was hosted by Marvin Yue and Ri Ryu and edited and produced by Marvin Yue. Follow the book club on Twitter and Instagram by going to @BooksandBoba and engage with us on Goodreads on our Goodreads group. You can also check out past episodes of the podcast by going to booksandboba.com and by subscribing to us on your favorite podcast app. Don't forget, you can support Books and Boba and Asian American authors by purchasing books at our bookshop.org account. Check out the link in our show notes and also at booksandboba.com. Books and Boba is a proud member of the Potluck Podcast Collective, a collective of Asian American hosted podcasts featuring unique voices and stories from the Asian diaspora. Learn more about the collective and check out our fellow Potluck shows by visiting the website podcastpotluck.com. Thanks for listening.
Co-host the podcast Asians in Baseball alongside Naomi Ko and Scott Okamoto. Asians in Baseball is exactly what it sounds like. A podcast about the Asian and Asian Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander Americans in Major League Baseball. Every week, we break down the highlights of what's going on with Asians in baseball and then take a deeper dive into the Asian and Asian Americans past and present who have shaped baseball as it is today. Whether you're Kim Eng's #1 fan or you've never even heard of Hideo Nomo, we've got something for everyone, especially for the Shohei Ohtani stans. Maybe too much for the Shohei Ohtani stans. Listen to Asians in Baseball wherever you get podcasts, part of the Potluck Podcast Collective.
Hey sports fans, welcome to Asians in Hockey. You may not realize it, but there's a rich history of Asians and AAPI folks who have contributed to the legacy of the greatest game on ice. From classic legends like Julie Chu and Robin Bawa to current greats like Leah Lum and Nick Suzuki, and even rising stars like Akane Shiga and Jason Robertson. We'll cover their stories, celebrate their accomplishments, and learn about their impact on the sport of hockey. I'm Nate Nakau, former beer league player, occasional youth hockey coach, and longtime hockey fan, and I'll be your host as we take a look at the rise of Asians in hockey. Subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pocket Casts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Part of the Potluck Podcast Collective.